What is the reason that animal agriculture is particularly problematic?
If we start with where we are and then look at where we might be going, we see what is arguably the biggest impact of all on Earth systems. So at the moment, if we look at mammals by weight on Earth, only 4% of the mammals on Earth are wild. 36% is us as human beings, and 60% is livestock. With birds, only 29% of birds by weight are wild, 71% are poultry, almost all of them chickens. It's an incredible capture of Earth systems by our livestock. And a lot of people talk about the population crisis, and what they mean when they talk about the population crisis is the human population. But actually, human population is one of the very few environmental indicators which is plateauing. It's leveling out very rapidly. The growth rate has dropped from 2% in the 1960s to under 1% now. And it'll probably hit the plateau mid-century and then start declining, unlike almost every other indicator, which is rocketing. But livestock population is rising by 2.4% a year. This is massive growth. And what that means, to put it in crude terms, by 2050, is that there'll be an extra 100 million tons of human being on Earth, but an extra 400 million tons of livestock. And it's livestock which are eating us out of house and home. It's that demand for feed and primarily for land, driven by livestock farming, that is the biggest driver of environmental destruction. So already roughly 50% of the cropland on Earth is used for feeding animals rather than going directly to human beings. But then much bigger than the amount of cropland we're using is the amount of pasture land. And there's been this catastrophic and completely ill-informed drive, not just by the livestock industry, but also by celebrity chefs, by food writers, by a whole lot of people, including even some environmentalists who just haven't looked at the science at all, saying we should be switching to eating pasture-fed meat. Now, pasture-fed meat is the worst possible farm product you can eat. It's the most damaging of all farm products because of the vast amount of land that it requires. So if land use is this issue that we should all be talking about. We should all be fully aware of it. And yet almost no one is. If we talk about land use at all, it's urban sprawl. And urban sprawl is definitely a real blight. You can see it if you go to Adelaide. There's many parts of the world where cities just aren't compact enough, and as a result, they do enormous harm both to urban life and to the countryside. But all the world's infrastructure, all the buildings on Earth, our homes, our businesses, our roads, our airports, all the rest of it occupy 1% of the terrestrial surface of the planet. Farming occupies 38% of the planet. 12% of that is crops, but 26%, the whole planet, is livestock farming on pasture. And it's pasture which is driving the collapse of Earth systems faster than anything else. And that's because of its enormous land demand. Because every hectare you occupy, you use for an extractive industry, is a hectare that can't be used to support wild ecosystems, such as rainforests or wetlands or savannas or natural grasslands, all of which are far richer, both in wildlife species and in carbon, than the pasture with which they've been replaced. And there's this very powerful myth being put about that pastures are good for wildlife, that that pasturing cattle restores ecosystems and sequesters carbon. It's simply untrue. It's just a massive, humongous lie on the same sort of scale as the fossil fuel industry's lies about more carbon dioxide being good for the planet because it's plant food. It's that scale of lie. And yet huge numbers of people and movies such as Kiss the Ground have bought into this and repeated this lie. And so it becomes very hard to confront people with what's really going on, which is that we've taken far more land than any other human use to put cattle and sheep onto pasture. and faster than anything else that's eating the planet. And all the rest of the land is either forest or protected area, and there's not nearly enough of either of those, or desert, or ice cap, or mountain. And farming, particularly rangeland farming, ranching, has taken everything there is.